Hello, good morning and welcome to our special Working from Home with Sage 50 Cloud Payroll webinar. My name's Duncan. I'll be hosting this session and we are joined this morning by our Sage Payroll experts Paddy and Stephen, who are on hand to answer any questions that you might have, which can be submitted via the questions section located on the right-hand side of your screen. So I hope everyone can hear me nice and clearly. Sound should be coming through your headphones or speakers. We are going to do a quick sound check. So if I could ask you, if you can hear me nice and clearly, just head to the questions panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, on the GoToWebinar control panel. If you can head to the questions and just say hello, type a quick message in just to confirm that the sound is being broadcast and that you can hear me at your end. So starting to get some responses through. Thank you, Nigel, Sharon, Ian, morning. So great, the sound is definitely working. So just while you're there, the questions panel can be used to submit questions that you have on any of the topics that we're covering today. We are going to pick up some hot topics at the moment on coronavirus related sick pay and the job retention scheme. And we're also going to run through the options that you have from working from home with Sage 50 Cloud Payroll. Other things that you might find useful in the control panel on the right hand side is the link to the handouts. So the little document icon contains 2 downloads for you, a copy of the slides and some links to useful information. So we'd urge you to download that as well. If you have a microphone, it remains muted during this session. That's why we have the questions panel to give you the chance to ask your questions. And if you want to switch to full screen, you should find an option towards the bottom of that section as well. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover in this morning's session. So as I say, we're going to start with a couple of hot topics. We're going to look at coronavirus related statutory sick pay, how that differs from normal sick pay and how you need to process that in your payroll software. We're then going to move on to the coronavirus job retention scheme, announced by the Chancellor a week last Friday. We're then going to talk about working from home with Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, running through the options that you have available and showing you how to download and install the software at home and restore a backup of your payroll data to transfer everything across. We're then going to stick around at the end of the webinar for our Q&A. So we'll do our very best to pick up as many questions as possible. We do have over 200 of you logged in right now. So as we try to work through the questions, we appreciate your patience. And if we don't get round to your question, you'll find loads of useful information from the links included in your handouts and from our help center. And I'll show you how to access all that help and support later on as we go through. So starting with our first topic, coronavirus related statutory sick pay. Just want to remind you on the latest government advice around this SSP scheme. So they are saying now that statutory sick pay will now be available for eligible employees diagnosed with COVID-19 or those that are unable to work because they're self-isolating in line with government advice. So they don't necessarily have to have symptoms of COVID-19. If someone they live with has symptoms, the entire household do need to self-isolate for 14 days. So in that scenario, the employee is eligible for statutory sick pay, assuming they meet the other qualifying conditions. For example, their average earnings are more than £118. And the Prime Minister also announced that that payment will be payable for day 1 instead of from day 4 for affected individuals. So the 3 waiting days that normally apply would not apply in the case of coronavirus-related SSP. Now, something else to be aware of is if you're a small or medium business with fewer than 250 employees, as at the end of February, you will be able to reclaim up to 2 weeks of SSP for coronavirus-related cases. And there's a new system being created by HMRC to allow you to make a claim, which means our advice on recording the statutory sick pay in the software is different to how you would record SSP for non-coronavirus related cases. So first thing I want to do is just to share some of the government information with you. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. If you haven't seen this site before, it's the business support website from the government, businesssupport.gov.uk. There is loads of useful information on here, so I'm going to put a link to it in the chat, and there's also a link within the handout that you can download. This gives you a nice summary of all of the different schemes available to help you with financial support, one of which is the statutory sick pay rebate scheme. So as you can see here, legislation is being brought forward to allow HMRC to refund up to 2 weeks SSP per eligible employee. You can get this refund if you're UK based and you employ fewer than 250 employees as at the 28th of February. That rebate scheme is still being developed. Further details will be provided in due course, so it's worth checking back on this site in the future. And you can access this once the new online portal has been created. So existing systems are not designed to facilitate this. That's why it is being built from scratch. And in order to help you record the SSP and pay it from day one, as well as making it easier to report on the coronavirus-related SSP payments, we are recommending different steps in your software to how you would usually process SSP. So all of these steps are documented in Ask Sage. I'm going to pick a link to that article in the chat for you. In a nutshell, you'll need to create a new pay element to process coronavirus SSP and add that to your employee record. You will need to manually calculate how much SSP you need to pay. Now that would be based on the weekly rate of SSP, currently £94.25. If you pay in the full payment for 1 or 2 weeks of self-isolation, it'd either be £94.25 or twice that amount. But if you're running a payroll and only want to pay part of that period of sickness, maybe up to your pay date, you can use this table to work out the daily rate of SSP based on the number of working days in your employee's normal week. The other thing you should do is to create a custom absence, and I'll show you how to do that, and then you can record the dates that the employee has actually been off sick within your Sage Payroll software. So let's take a quick look at how that's going to work. As you can see, I'm already logged into Sage 50 Payroll. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to create the new pay element to pay coronavirus-related SSP. So I'm going to go to the company toolbar here in the bottom left corner, and then I'm going to go into the pay element section here on the left-hand side. You've got all of my standard payments for things like basic, bonus, and overtime. And I'm then going to click New here at the bottom to create my payment for coronavirus SSP. So that's exactly what I'm going to enter as the description. I'm not going to enter any default values at this point, but I do need to quickly check the settings just underneath to ensure that this payment is subject to tax and national insurance. I've got PAYE and national insurance ticked. It forms part of the qualifying earnings and that it's subject to the usual attachment orders. Now, to check whether it's pensionable, you would need to check the rules of your pension scheme. If you want this payment to be included in pension calculations, you would select these boxes. If it's not to be included, you would clear the pension boxes just here. So I'm happy with these settings. I'm just going to click OK, and that will then create the payment, which can then be assigned to the employees. That can either be done to individual employees as and when you need to use it, or you could use the global changes option to assign it to a number of employees at the same time. So I'm just going to assign it to one employee. Just going to go into the employee record and onto the employment tab. If I then click pay elements here at the bottom, this is where we can assign the payments. And on this first available line, I'm going to then choose coronavirus SSP from the list. And that will then be a line when I come to enter the payments, and it will show the coronavirus SSP separately on the payslip. And the other thing to set up is the custom absence, as this will help you with reporting on the dates that the employee has actually been off sick. The new rules around SSP starting from day one apply to any sickness related to coronavirus that started on or after Friday the 13th of March. And to record that information on the absence diary, we suggest you go into your company settings using this option at the top. If you then go onto the absence tab, you'll be able to set up a custom absence reason. So I'm just going to use the first one to enter my description of coronavirus SSP. And what we could then do for the relevant employees is we can access their absence diary, and that's within the employee record. And then we can record the period of self-isolation or COVID-19 related sickness by recording a custom absence. So usually you would choose SSP. In this case, I would go to custom absences. I would choose the one that is set up for this, and then I would enter the period. So in this case, Monday the 16th through to Sunday the 29th. And I'll just put a little comment in there that will also appear on the relevant reports. So we've recorded the absence and we've assigned the pay element. When it comes to running the payroll, this is where you'll need to manually enter the SSP that's payable. So I've already set my pay date to 31st of March, just happens to be today. I'm going to go into enter payments. You'll see the usual payments I normally make to this employee, which in this case is their salary, monthly salary, £2,500. And for coronavirus SSP, I'm going to work out 2 weeks at £94.25, and that in total is £188.50. What you then need to do, as you would do with any statutory payment, is make an adjustment to the employee's basic, or their salary in this case. If we've got an agreement to make up to their normal salary when the employee is off sick, so if we have a company sick pay scheme, we would simply reduce the salary by the amount of the SSP. And then you can see in total, this employee will get the same gross pay, but we'll be able to report on the fact that we've paid them coronavirus SSP. Or if we don't have a company sick pay scheme and we only want to pay them salary for the days they actually worked, we would need to do an adjustment to the salary, either adjusting the rate or the hours. In this case, I've decided to adjust the hours to reflect the fact that they worked 12 days out of a possible 22 in March. And therefore, the amount of normal salary will be this, and they'll get their coronavirus SSP on top. So main reason we're recommending doing it this way is so that the SSP payment can be paid from day one. That wouldn't happen if you recorded sickness on the absence diary, because it would take into account the waiting days. And also that you can run reports such as the payment type history report to see how much coronavirus SSP you've paid, and the detailed custom absence report to see the dates of those absences. So I'll give you a quick recap of that process before we move on to our next topic. So we started by setting up a new coronavirus SSP pay element. We added that to the employee record. You then needed to manually calculate the amount for coronavirus SSP based on the current rates for that payment. And then you also set up a custom absence type and record that custom absence in the employee record. So more information is available. Those full steps are available in Article 46359. So what I'm going to move on to next is another hot topic right now, and that's the coronavirus job retention scheme. We have very recently updated our guidance on how to process this within the software, and the government has published detailed guidance as of last Thursday night. So all of this is very new, and we're interpreting this as best we can based on that government guidance. So I want to give you a quick overview of how that scheme works. I'm going to point you in the direction of further support from the government on how to implement this scheme, and then we'll give you a quick demo of how to do that in the program as well. So what is the job retention scheme? I'm sure you've heard of it. It was announced by the Chancellor to support businesses affected by COVID-19. The job retention scheme would actually apply to employees who've been asked to stop working, but who you're keeping on the payroll. and they're otherwise described as furloughed workers. The idea is you keep them on the payroll rather than making them redundant or letting them go. And that way, hopefully there'll be some work for them to do once this crisis is over. To support you with this, HMRC will reimburse 80% of an employee's usual wage costs, their regular salary, up to £2,500 per month, plus the associated employer national insurance and minimum auto-enrolment employer pension contributions. So this is a grant that you will receive. You'll need to apply for it using a brand new system being developed by HMRC, and that system is due to become live towards the end of next month. So you'll need to designate affected employees as furloughed workers and notify them of this change, and that's all subject to employment law and any clauses in their contracts. And then once this new online portal is live, you'll submit the relevant information to HMRC about those employees and their earnings, and they will then pay you the grant. So you can find more information on this again from the business support website, and that links to the detailed guidance as well on gov.uk. And then you've got the steps to process it in your program in Ask Sage, and you'll find all of them in Article 46376. So let's take a look at some of the guidance first, and then we'll give you a quick demo on how to do this in your program. So just heading back to that business support website from UK government, the coronavirus job retention scheme is right here towards the top of the financial support available. It's applicable to UK employees that had a PAYE scheme that started on or before the 28th of February. It would be applicable to employees who've been asked to stop working who are being kept on the payroll rather than being laid off. And then it says here that you'll get that grant worth 80% of the employee's usual wage costs, capped at £2,500 per month, plus associated employer costs. So all UK-wide employers are eligible. You'll need to designate the employees as furloughed workers and submit the information. And then the further guidance, all of the detail is available from this link at the bottom, guidance for employers, and I'll put a direct link to that to you in the chat as well. So a couple of things just to point out in this guidance. An employee needs to have worked with you, they need to have been on your PAYE payroll on the 28th of February 2020 to be furloughed. It can include employees on agency contracts and those on 0-hour contracts. Bit of advice on statutory sick pay. So if you've got employees on sick leave or self-isolating, they should get SSP but can be furloughed after this. And then employees who are shielding in line with public health guidance can be placed on furlough. Tells you what you'll need to work out, what you can claim. So this gives you the guidance on how to work out that 80% figure. Essentially for full and part-time employees with fixed salaries, you would use their salary as at the 28th of February to calculate the 80%. If the pay varies, you take the higher of the same month's earnings in the previous year or the average monthly earnings for the 2019-20 tax year. So loads of detail available in this article. It also tells you a bit more guidance on what you'll need in order to make this claim. So some of the details you would need to have available. So we've put the product specific steps in our coronavirus job retention scheme article. And again, there's a link to this going in the chat. And I'm going to run you through these steps in how to process furlough payments. Very similar to what you've just seen with SSP, we're going to create a furlough pay element, add that to the employee, and then you'll be able to sort of track those payments by running the payment type history report. So back into payroll. to create a separate line for furlough payments, simply to make reporting on it easier in the future. You would go to Company and then Pay Elements. You'd create your new pay element using the option at the bottom, and you would enter a description, for example, furlough. You would then need to check your settings. Furlough payments are taxable and subject to national insurance. They are also subject to attachment orders, and you would need to check with your pension provider as to whether they should form part of pensionable pay. And then that payment can be used as a separate line on the payslip and the enter payment screen to pay the 80% capped at $2,500 per month that you'll be reclaiming. So I mentioned before that you can assign pay elements using global changes. So if you had a number of staff that you placed onto furlough, you could select them first. Go to Tasks, Global Changes, and Payments. And you could then add the payment, selecting our new furlough payment from this list. And then when it comes to entering the employee's pay, you'll be able to use that new line to record these payments that ultimately you'll be claiming back. So let's just imagine this employee has been furloughed as of the 1st of March. That's the earliest date you can backdate furlough payments to. Their usual salary is the same each month. It's $2,083.33. So for the furlough pay, I could work out 80% of that amount, or I could set the hours or number to 0.8, and it would work it out for me. Now, as an employer, you can top this up to your employee's normal wage if you want to. If you don't, you would set the value to 0 for the normal salary. Then they would just be paid their furlough payment. Or in this case, if I did want to make up the difference, I might enter 0.2. And then we can see in total, they would get their normal salary amount. Now you could, if you wanted to, still create a custom absence if you wanted to record the dates on the absence diary, similar to what we did with SSP. You should be keeping records of what time period you've agreed to furlough your employees, and you would write to them confirming that as well. So if you did want to go down the route of custom absences, it's exactly the same as what we did with recording the coronavirus SSP on the absence diary. So that's about it for the quick demo on the job retention scheme. As I say, the full steps are in the Ask Sage article, so do check that out. The link to it's on your handout as well. And we've also got FAQs on that scheme available in Ask Sage. Right, so we've got one further topic that we're going to briefly discuss in this morning's webinar, and that's all around working from home with Sage 50cloud Payroll. So many of you, probably the majority of you, are joining this webinar from your home. I'm working from home. I guess most of the country is where they can working from home in line with government guidance. So if you're running a payroll, you are going to need access to your Sage Payroll software in order to do your job. So we're going to run through the options available to you depending on what your setup is at work. And we're also going to show you how to download the latest version of the program and how to transfer your payroll data by restoring an all files backup. So first of all, let's briefly discuss your options. If you have a relatively simple setup at work, you're a single user, for example, you've got payroll installed on one machine, and you might even have the data held on that machine as well. What we recommend that you do to work from home is to simply install the latest version of Sage Payroll on your home PC and then restore a backup of your payroll files so that everything transfers over and you can continue working from your home location. And we're going to show you those steps in the next quick demos. Another option that may be available to you is to access your work PC remotely. So this is something, if you have IT support, that they may be able to help you with. If they can arrange remote access to your work PC, you would then use your home PC kind of jump onto that work one, and then you would operate the program as if you were at work, but you're just at a remote location. Now, we can't give specific guidance on that, but it is something your IT support might be able to help you set up. And when it comes to multi-user systems, where you've got Payroll installed on more than one machine, and you've got more than one user logging into the same set of data, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. So some of the options available to you might be to access your work PC remotely and then use that in the same way as you would do at work, just controlling it from a remote PC. Another option is perhaps to install the software on a home PC or a laptop that has access to your work network using a VPN, and that way you'll be able to connect to the data on your network. Or the third option is to install at home and restore a backup, but what you'll then need to do is to work very closely with other payroll users to make sure that whoever's processing payroll is using the latest backup available. So you won't be able to work concurrently. You won't be able to be processing at the same time if everyone's got a backup restored on their home PC. It will be down to you to arrange how to share that latest backup to make sure whoever's running a payroll has restored the most up-to-date information. Which is why with multi-user systems, one of the first two options might be more appropriate. So let's just run you through the steps if you do need to install and transfer your data to your home PC. A couple of things you will need to do from your work PC is to take a full backup of your payroll data. I'm going to show you how to do that in the demo. And you'll also need to take a note of your activation details. So those are your serial number, your activation key, and your account number. You can either get them from your existing program on your work PC, or you can sign into My Account on the Sage website and find them from there. Once you've got those details at home, you can download and install the latest version of Payroll. You can then activate your program and restore an all files backup, and that way everything is transferred across, ready for you to start working on Payroll at home. So let's take a quick look at the steps to do from your work PC. Just switching back to Sage Payroll. So we will need a full backup of your payroll data, which you can get by going to the File menu and then down into Backup. That takes you into the Backup wizard, and when you click Next, it'll ask you what files you want to back up. Now, automatically, data, RTI, and pension data files are selected, as well as document files. But some of you might have customized reports or templates that you also need access to at home. So what we recommend is that you select everything in this list. So everything from document files, from default files right down to document files to ensure that you do have a full backup of your payroll data. When I click onto Next, it'll then ask for a path for the backup. And because you'll need to access this backup at home, you will need to either save it to a removable disk, such as a memory stick. You could save it to online storage, OneDrive, Google Drive, or Dropbox, for example, or you may be able to email it as an attachment to yourself if your email system can cope with that size attachment. So what I'm going to do is I've got some online storage. I use OneDrive. So I'm going to save this back up to my OneDrive and give it a slightly different name, working from home, just to make it easy to find. And if I then complete the backup wizard, it will take a little bit longer than normal because this time it is including all of the reports that I use, including any customized reports that I might have. And once the backup is complete, we'll see a confirmation message on screen. And then in my case, I will be able to download that file from my OneDrive and restore it on my home PC. Now, the other thing that you'll need is the activation details. One place you can find them is if you go to Help and then About from your work PC. You look under the license information section and you take a note of your serial number, your activation key, and your account number. So it's these three things that you'll need to activate your program at home. If you can't get onto that screen for any reason, you'll find the same details by logging into My Account on the Sage website. So once you get back home, you will need to download the latest version of the program. And we've actually got an article that takes you through these steps as well. So I'm just going to find that for you and put a link to it here in the chat. So this article, Working from Home with Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, contains some instructions in installing the program at home. That links off to our install article. And then from here, we've got the link to download and install version 26. So click that link to download it. As you can see, that starts downloading in your browser. And once you've got that file, you can run it to install the program. And then you'll be able to activate it and restore your backup. So to recap those steps, from the work PC, get a full backup of your data, check your activation details. At home, download and install Sage Payroll. I'll show you some screenshots on the installation process, and then restore the all files backup that you took from the work location. So here's what the install looks like. Once you run that file that you downloaded, you will need to accept the license in order to continue. You're given two options, typical or custom, and we strongly recommend that you use the typical option in almost all cases. That will then install the program to the default locations, which are displayed on the current settings screen. And then when you click next, it just takes a couple of minutes to install all the necessary files. And then once the installation's complete, it will create the shortcut to Sage Payroll on your desktop. So when you run that for the first time, you will be prompted to enter your account number, serial number, and activation key, which is why we asked you to make a note of those. Once you put those details in, you get a number of options. The one that you'll be choosing is the one at the bottom, Restore a Backup. And then when you go on to the next step, you can browse to the backup file that you took from your work PC, and then that will be restored, and you'll be prompted to log into your company. Now, the only other option that you might choose from here is if you're installing on a PC that still has access to the work network and you want to browse to existing data on your server. So if that applies to you, if you've got a VPN, you can access the work network. Once you've installed the program, you might choose this option. But for most of you, you'll be restoring a backup, and that moves everything onto your home PC. And that kind of brings us to the end of the demos that we wanted to show you in today's session. So we've had a look briefly at coronavirus-related SSP and the coronavirus job retention scheme. And we've got all the detail available on those from our Ask Sage articles. We've then looked at the options from working from home, how to download and restore your backup. And I just want to finish by pointing you in the direction of all the further support that we have available for you. And we do currently have some free e-learning training that you can access without charge from Sage University. So just want to make you aware of that as well. And we are going to stay on the webinar to continue answering your questions. So you can keep those coming via the questions panel. We'll do our very best to answer as many as possible. If we don't get around to your question, you might find your answer following the useful links in the handout, either from our help centre or from the government advice. So speaking of the help centre, you can access this easily within Sage Payroll by clicking on the help centre button that appears in the options above your employee list. And you can also access it from any browser by going to sage.co.uk/help. Once you find your way to the Payroll Help Centre, you'll be able to search our knowledge base, and you'll be able to read our trending articles, many of which we've covered in today's webinars. You can read our full support guides on various topics and access our videos. And if you click the training link, that's where you'll find the e-learning option, and you'll be able to create a login for Sage University. and access our payroll e-learning free of charge for a limited time. It's also where you'll find a link to our Sage Q&A live, and I actually wanted to show you that as well in the program. So if I just go back to my screen for a second, this was the Help Center icon I was referring to. Opens up the Help Center in a separate screen. Just taking a couple of seconds to open there. Straight away, you'll see the link to our Coronavirus Information Hub. So you can go onto that. You can see the trending topics, quite a lot of which we have been looking at today. Training is where you find the link to the e-learning. And this is what I just mentioned, Sage Q&A Live. So this is a session that runs all day, Monday to Friday, usually between 9 and 5, but I believe we're extending those hours between 8 and 6 currently. So you can join a live session where there's a panel of Sage experts waiting to answer your questions. You would enter in the chat, similar to what you've done today, or in the questions panel, and you would get your answer. You can watch demos as well on those live sessions. So I'll just leave that information on further support up on the screen for you. And what we're now going to do is we're going to focus on the questions that you're asking. So if you haven't had any questions yourself, and you'll be leaving us now, thanks so much for joining me this morning. I hope you found the information we've given you today useful, and you've got the confidence of knowing where to find further support with all of these topics. If you have asked a question, we'll do our best to come on to it next, but do look out for other questions that have been answered, as they could well be very similar to what you're asking. So we're going to stick around for the next sort of 10-15 minutes, do our very best to answer those questions for you. I'm going to come off the line for now, but I will be back at the end of the webinar just before we close down. So bye for now, and look out in the questions panel for those answers.